during construction, during a construction inspection of these smoke clearing fans that are part of the fire suppression alarm system in a new school building, the inspector tells the general contractor that a more powerful fan will be needed. This actually happens all the time. It's happened to me, it's happened to a bunch of friends of mine, where as we go through, we have a whole plan, and then the fire marshals come in and put a smoke bomb into a thing and see how does the smoke actually get out in time. That's a typical thing for like assembly spaces and things like that. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then they'll say, nope, you got to replace it. So, okay, the inspector has said we needed a more powerful fan. The GC then tells the architect and the owner that the cost for this new fan will be $50,000. Reviewing the information from the inspector and the GC, the architect looks it over and tells the owner that the new fan configuration probably should only cost about $20,000. In the subsequent discussions, the GC isn't budging. The GC says, no, I'm sticking with the $50,000. What should the architect do at that point? So we have a couple different possibilities. A, issue a construction change directive. B, issue a change order for the $20,000 that the architect believes the cost should be. C, issue a change order for $50,000, but with a codicil that is attached to it that says the number is in dispute. Or D, issue an addenda with the new fan information. So a couple quick things we can do. One is D, it's not addenda because the addenda is only used, that term is only used during the bid phase. So we know it can't be the addenda because we're already in construction and they are looking at actual building stuff. So addenda is only used for the bid phase of these things. So we know it's not D. So then we look at C and we say issue a change order for $50,000, but with a codicil that says the number is in dispute. Well, that actually doesn't really make any sense. It seems like a good answer because it's sort of the truth. You really kind of want to move forward, but you want to say, but wait, we haven't actually agreed to this. But the entire point of a change order is that you are changing, the change of change order, you are changing the contract. So when you change the contract, you can't just sign the form and say, okay, here we go, we've changed the contract. Oh, but by the way, we don't believe it's the real contract. Like, then it's not the contract. So you can't just add something onto it that says, oh yeah, we don't believe this number. So when you do a change order, remember that it's changing the contract. So the contract got signed at the beginning of the construction, and now it keeps altering along the way because issues keep coming up. And those issues, just like a contract, will be about the main essence of the project. So the contract will have all sorts of bits of information in it. It'll be about lots of different things. But if you really broke it down to the core of it, the contract between the owner and the contractor, the GC, is going to be about cost, fee. It's going to be about time, schedule, and it's going to be about the scope of the work that's being talked about. Now, it's possible that whatever the change order is zero cost or zero delay in time, or it's a change in cost only and not a change in the scope. So you don't necessarily have all three, but you're referencing all three of those issues every time you're messing with the contract. So you have a change order, you're going to say this will add 0 days, but it's going to cost an extra $30,000 or whatever it happens to be. You're going to tell what the scope is. So C, unfortunately, even though it sounds good, isn't the right answer. It's just not a reasonable thing. The change order is part of the contract. You can't just mess around with it. Okay, now about B. B looks good if we can't do C, so we're just going to write the one for $20,000 because that's the number it should be, because that's what the architect has determined. But who's going to sign that change order? The architect and the owner, really, the GC is going to sign it, even though they say it's $50,000? Like, why would they sign that? They're not going to sign that change order. They're not going to change their contract for a number that they don't believe in. So B, sadly, can't work. What that means is what we have left here is A. And A is the construction change directive. This is sort of a weird, specific little kind of rule, but it's one that they kind of like to ask a question or two on, so you should definitely be familiar with the concept. So when you have your, you've signed your contract with the owner, let's say the B101, and the GC has signed their contract with the owner, the A101. Could be a couple of other versions of that, but let's just say it's the 101s. In those contracts, there are lots of references both in the contract and to other elements outside of the contract that are brought in that say, here's how we deal with disputes. Here's how we deal with a problem that comes up. And there's a bunch of variations. Some contracts may say, well, whatever it is, you're going to go to litigation, or whatever it is, we're going to do arbitration. Or maybe it says, we're not going to allow litigation, we're not going to allow arbitration, we're only going to allow mediation. It's pretty untypical to do that. Usually it would be start with mediation and then go to arbitration, and then sometimes they don't allow litigation. So if there's a problem, there's a process that's built into the contracts for how to deal with that problem. But here you are in a situation where you're under construction, you're trying to get this thing done. Really, you're going to go into litigation that might take 2 years, and the building's going to sit empty, and like it just doesn't make any sense. Like it doesn't work that way. There's time is an integral part of the construction and design process. And so they've built in a system to say, okay, we get that this is still in dispute. We get that not everybody is on board. But by signing these contracts, we've all agreed to this sort of set of rules. And one of the rules is, all right, it's in dispute, but time is money. We have to keep moving. We are saying to you, general contractor, owner and architect are saying this by producing the construction change directive, go and build it anyway. We know you have a dispute about how much things are going to cost in the end, and we'll figure it out at some point. We'll go into arbitration or mediation or potentially litigation, and when that comes, we'll get it all worked out. But for right now, we need to just get the work done, and then we can argue about it for whatever length of time we want to afterwards. It's an important idea because you start realizing, first of all, how the contracts are all working, but also how important not just cost is, but time, right? So scope, time, and cost are really what all of those elements are about. Construction change directive, it's kind of a fascinating sort of idea, and you'll definitely see it on the exam at some point.